Got it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit record. Okay. Which is also hit record, but that's not what we're doing. Okay. So whenever you're ready, go for it.
Hi, it's David Lawson from awakewarrior.com. You're listening to Jeff Smith and I at Veer, Vroom, Vroom.
No. Vroom, vroom, Veer. Try it.
Shit.
And you made me laugh. So try it again.
Hi, it's David Lawson from awakewarrior.com. You're listening to Jeff Smith and I at Vroom, Vroom, Veer. We look forward to talking to you today.
Well done. I'll take it. You got all the pieces in. All right. I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Misha Rubin. Thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Great, Jeffrey. It's excellent. I'm so happy to be here.
So you are at, well, thank you for being here and thank you for those nice words. You're having your tea. I'm having my water. We're comfortable and having a good time just having met each other. Okay, great. Niceties aside. You are Misha Rubin. You're at thecareerleap.com and that's a pretty awesome title there. I like your URL. So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business today.
Oh, mine. So what I do is I facilitate meaningful, intentional changes at work and in life for people.
Ooh, baby.
So when people
Thanks. That's a good gig.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So when somebody wants to make, for instance, some change in their career, or trying to figure out what's next for them, or want to actually transform their life more broadly, that's when they come to me.
I love that. That sounds like a really good gig. I don't want to do it, but it sounds like a good gig.
Listen, I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
It just so happens that yesterday was my last day at work. Hopefully forever. Yes. So I am right in that space of, hey, what's next? Right. So yes, we can talk about it. How convenient.
Yes. So what is next for you then? Now I'm curious.
Well, what is next for me? I'm going to say the best answer I heard was like yesterday or maybe earlier today. Have you ever heard of this guy named Derek Sivers? He's like yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the one that did CD Baby.
CD Baby, yes.
I released my album through CD Baby.
That's amazing. So Derek Sivers was just asked that question. And he said, now that you've made all this money and you've sold your company and you've renounced your U.S. citizenship and have $22 million and lots of money and you can do anything you want, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to write poetry and plant trees. Because he can, right? And he hasn't planted any trees yet, but that's kind of my fill-in answer because I don't know. But I know from past experience, you can't just, party all the time. So I'll have to write poetry and plant trees. And that's a fill-in for something that I'll actually do because I'm not going to do either one of those two things. Does that make any kind of sense? I'm just going to...
Sure. That's exactly the point when people come to me and say, hey, I am either have this, like, for instance, like I'm retired, I'm retiring.
Right.
Or I am, I've made enough money and I'm thinking about what to do next. Or I'm in this corporate career and I've been successful, but now I'm actually interested in fulfillment. Or, or I haven't been making enough money and I want to have a career where I want to make money. So I think part of my methodology that I developed is to understand the criteria for change. And that's kind of the deep inner work that I do with my clients to get to before, like figuring out what you want to do in life is really a function of knowing who you are, right? And that's really the deep work that we do.
Awesome. So maybe I should have you on my show like once a week for about, 2 months so I can get free coaching.
Who knows? We might come up with a deal like that.
I'm teasing.
You will have to be really vulnerable, though.
I'll pay you a lot of money and you can give me my next thing. I'm maybe, you never know. Maybe you never know. Okay. So this is Vroom Vroom Veer. So you didn't know this, but we got to go back in time and talk about you as a child. So talk a little bit about where you grew up and what your childhood was like.
I grew up in Ukraine. In fact, I grew up in the former Soviet Union.
Oh, wow.
And
okay. So in Ukraine, when it was from former Soviet Union. Wow. Okay.
my childhood was great. I don't think there's like, I've had great friends that I'm still friends with. I loved mathematics, and I had a degree in mathematics, and I had great teachers, and I lived like a normal kind of middle class like life, and it was awesome.
Okay. All right. So math. So if I were to say math in my mind, that means you're probably not like, were you not into sports at all? Or were you into sports?
No, I was diving. I was not like a super sportsman, but I did some sports. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good for you. Like I grew up in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, so it was really cold and snowy. Did you have snow where you grew up? Is there snow in Ukraine? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit less now, but when I grew up, we had a lot of snow. I grew up skiing. We went to Carpathian Mountains and skied a lot.
Wow. Okay, that sounds fun. So what about like college? Did you go to college? Did you get a degree in math? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I started my studies back in Ukraine, but then I moved to the States and I got my degree in computer science and math at NYU.
Computer studies and math. Okay. So that's an interesting combination. I like that. So did you, what was your first job then after you got out of college?
My first job, I was working in a small management consulting firm, and then I worked on Wall Street for many years.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think one of the things, and that's one of the big realization for me, as a career educator, I usually say, if you look at your career choices, you probably haven't made a single authentic, conscious choice in your career. And I pinpoint people to three things.
Okay.
One is other people's opinions, right?
Sure.
So, and it doesn't have to be necessarily somebody's forcing you, but just ideas in the environment, your parents, in your community. So in the community of, immigrants from the former Soviet Union, when we, the idea was you have to graduate, get a degree in computer science, graduate as soon as possible, and go work on Wall Street. So I did just that.
That's how to be successful, right? That's the path, right?
So that's the first one, is other people's opinion. The second one is circumstances, right? So these jobs. So if you look at your career, like how this job, and then maybe that job, or maybe somebody knew somebody, or maybe just it popped up, or a recruiter found you, or somebody called you, like it's very circumstantial. Mm-hmm. And the third driver is inertia. So that's how you stay in one place for a long period of time, because for whatever reason, maybe you don't think there is anything better. Maybe you don't think you're capable for anything better. Maybe you're afraid to take a risk.
Right.
But if you look at these three drivers, those probably the three ones that drive most of people's career decisions. And then no wonder that a lot of people, and I'm talking about like 80% and more of people that don't feel fulfilled or satisfied at their jobs right now. So no wonder there is no like very predictable outcome.
Yeah. So what sort of work were you doing? Were you using more of the math or more of the computer science? Obviously, it sounds like you were on Wall Street, so maybe more of the math stuff?
No, I did a lot of computer science. I did some of the technology.
Okay.
But over time, I became more technology and business, and then I became a partner at Ernst Young. So I was selling projects and delivering projects and working with Wall Street clients, and so doing a lot of important things,
air quotes, important, right?
Till one moment I remember, that was like about more than 3 years ago now, that I was sitting in one of these business meetings in a conference room. It was before COVID, with real people, and everybody was talking. I heard my corporate voice, talking.
Right.
And then I heard my quiet voice, and my quiet voice told me, hey, there's no way you're going to be doing this anymore. That's not aligned with who you are. It wasn't that polite, that voice, but that's basically what it said. And at that time, I was with management consulting firm for 15 years. I was partner for 5 of them. I was making more money than I could ever imagined as an immigrant coming from Ukraine.
Right.
I also didn't have a clear idea what to do. I also was a breadwinner in my family and had 3 young kids. And I did something that I'm not recommending to anybody, but I jumped over the cliff. And it was kind of really like a moment of truth and a moment of choice for me. And I usually say, don't jump over the cliff. It's dangerous. It's not a good idea. And as I was flying over the cliff, I was thinking that we are taught zillions of things in our lifetime, but nobody really teaches us about career education. Like, how do we choose what's right for us? What's the right profession? What's the right career? What's the right organization? What's the right industry? When it is the right time to make change? Like, how do we know all these things? Nobody teaches us. And I basically dedicated my life from that point on of developing tools to help people make these decisions and make choices that are right for them and make them. So I turned them into the Career Leap method, which is like a system of tools and approaches, so you can actually do it in a very conscious, systematic way.
And you can learn those very important sort of like career leapy skills, or maybe more like how to navigate, your whole work life.
Well, I think it's related to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the tools are related actually, to understanding who you are and what it is you want, right? So the tools are related to understanding what are the possibilities are out there, because one of the things people feel stuck in their careers, they really don't understand the scope of what's available to them. And then how do you make the choice? And then from that point on, when you know what it is you want and what it is you're pursuing, then it's all about how do you build a compelling personal brand story that resonates, how you take all your knowledge and experience and skills and package in a way that it's relevant for the audience and for the jobs that you're pursuing, and how do you actually get what you want.
Right. That's pretty good. So how did that leap work out for you in particular? What happened next?
Well, what happened, so, when I left my corporate career in the beginning, like I tried a bunch of different ideas, and then one morning I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I know exactly why I wasn't fulfilled. I know exactly why I had language for it. And that was the beginning of the Career Leap method. And I'm a man of action. So as soon as I had this idea, I was like, okay, I posted on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I got my first 3 clients.
Oh, wow.
And it's just like the more I work with people, the more I was developing my method, the more I understood what's missing. It's still in development. I still add things and change things all the time. The more I work with people, the better I understand what it is people need, what type of questions they need to ask themselves, what type of research they need to do, what types of disempowering beliefs they need to deal with, what type of support they need. So the more I've done it, the more I build out my method. But right now it's in a very mature state. It's been producing a lot of great outcomes for people. So yeah, that's my leap story.
That's amazing.
One of my many leap stories, right?
Well, maybe we'll get some more, but that's a really good one. So you said this kind of happened like pre-COVID. So what was lockdown like for you? And was your leap sort of like right around or right before or right after lockdown? How did that work out?
It was a very challenging lockdown for me because I'm a parent of 3 young kids. So any parent would relate how hard it was to be with kids at that period. And then we also decided to move. We lived in New York City, and then first we moved temporarily out of the city. Then we decided to make a permanent move. So that was like a lot of moving. But from my business perspective, it was actually a time of a lot of introspection for people. So that was a lot of time when people were, I guess, ending up locked down at your home kind of forces you to think about some esoteric matters that you're often busy to think about. So from my business perspective, it was, a fine time because people were questioning things. And what I'm really interested in working people that want to question their status quo, want to challenge it, and want to see what's, on the other side.
It did, have the lockdown and the pandemic had so many documented now. Everybody knows this, right? But like obviously horrible, right? But so many silver linings. Like how we would have never had a hybrid work kind of environment in the US without that lockdown. And it's still continuing, right? So it's changed the work landscape completely. It's opened up so many new opportunities for remote work, hybrid work. Like I was in a government job, that job that I just quit that I told you about. So I was working with the U.S. Department of Energy, and March 17th we all went home, and we stayed home until I don't know, 2 years. So we all had, and being in the IT shop, we had to figure that out, right? So we got lucky.
Right.
We got super lucky. Like the guys that I was working with, like I want to say like January or something, they were like, this pandemic might be a thing, so let's make more remote servers. And they were right, So anyway, so let's talk a little bit about that whole like what the pandemic did. Yeah.
In fact, this is what I want to say, that this one of the things that people don't realize, like we live in the most extraordinary times from career opportunities.
So true.
And there are 4 reasons for that. The number one is that with pandemic, there is much fewer geographic boundaries to work, right?
Right.
Nobody ever had that. Like we need to acknowledge nobody ever had that.
Totally.
Number 2, also pandemic that's already was in place, but I think pandemic accelerated the whole business and societal shift. Right. And every time there is a shift, there's always opportunities, business opportunities. There's always some new things happening. And I think we are seeing a lot of that right now. Number 3, there's been the least amount of barriers to start your business. And I just used myself as an example. I have no idea what people had to do 30 years ago when they wanted to start their business, but right now it's just much easier to do it. I'm not saying it's easy to have a business or run it, but to start it is much easier.
Right.
Whether it's for you or for other people. And number 4, unprecedented access to learning, right? So you can sit on your couch, you can get an MBA, you can get a certification degree from an Ivy League school, you can get classes for free, or there are so many options for education.
You can just learn things for fun.
You can learn things for fun.
Right.
But if you look at these 4 things that no other generation ever had, what's available to us. So if not now, when will be a better time to
there's never going to be a better time
for you to, if you want a job that's meaningful, fulfilling, and whatever, you want to be successful, you want to be on the top of your game. Right now is really truly just very unique times that our parents couldn't even dream about.
Yeah, totally. And there is no other circumstance I can conceive of that would make a federal employee learn how to do a Zoom call other than a pandemic. But they all know how now, and they don't want to go back to the office.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about this whole idea of a career, because you kind of talked a little bit about how, like, when we go to school, you in Ukraine and me too, like we never learned that growing up. But, this whole idea of your work life being a career, that whole idea has changed. Like pandemic and probably before that and after. So let's talk a little bit about what your thoughts on just the whole concept of what a career means.
Right. I think that what I think even probably our generation, when we went to college, we thought we choosing a profession for life, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
That was definitely our parents, or like I have an older brother, when you were choosing your profession. And at that time, colleges costed much less money, right? And whatever the money that costed was still pretty expensive. You knew that you're making an investment for life. And I think right now we're living in a different world that regardless whatever it is you're going to study in college or whatever it is you think you're going to be doing, most likely you'll be changing your career more than once in your lifetime. Sure. So I would say the generation that graduating from colleges now should be counting on having multiple careers and multiple career paths. So I think from that perspective, it's even more important to know how to make right decisions, because you'll be making those decisions more than once in your life, and more than once you probably will be doing pivots and making significant changes. So I would say, if in the past we cared about, like, having you done this choice, just how to navigate that career, that's one thing. But now in this world, I think the career education just becomes even more relevant because you'll be making those choices for a lifetime.
Yeah, and you'll keep doing it. That's one thing that I'm really grateful. Okay, here's an opportunity for Misha to learn a little bit about Jeff. So I was in the military 20 years, right? So I was in the Air Force, and in the military, you have to move and change jobs. You're not technically changing jobs, but you're definitely changing places and bases, like every 2 or 3 years, or maybe 4, something like that. So that was really cool for me, right? I was more or less doing the same thing, but always a little bit different. It's sort of like there was this core of same stuff, and then maybe there'll be more computer stuff, or maybe there'll be more HR stuff. But for the most part, I knew my job, right? But completely different place, whole new bunch of people. And that was great, So like when I became a civilian, I was like, man, I missed that.
Right.
I was really primed, for, I don't want to, I think I met somebody. So when I got this job in 2018 with the Department of Energy,
right,
one of my coworkers, she had been a federal employee, and she had that job in the same building for 17 years. And she said that, and I was like, wow, 17 years in one place.
Yeah.
And she went, is that weird? And I went, no, that's completely normal. It would be weird if you were in the military, and she was like, yeah, but you did that. And I was like, sure, I did 20 years, but that was like 2 years here, and 3 years here, and 4 years here, and then a deployment for 59 days. And then, another, so it was broken up, right? It was less boring. Sorry.
But I think right now people will be really forced, people will be forced that some jobs will be going away. Some jobs will be transforming how they are with technology, with all the chat GPT, like all the artificial intelligence components that becoming much more real and much less abstract. The way I think even a year ago when people talked about AI, that still seemed to be very abstract, but now you have very specific tools that can write for you, create poetry for you, can
make really cool art,
create documents, that can really do a lot of write code.
Yes,
so
writing
I would
code
say
is scary, right? All those developers are having to learn
jobs.
that. Yeah. In my job now, I sit right next to a developer. And he explained to me, he was like, I have to learn how to use these tools.
Yes.
I have no choice, even if I don't like them. And I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Yes.
So let's take a Veer moment here, because this is kind of an interesting question that I want to hear your thoughts. So how do you know if being an entrepreneur is right for you?
Great. That's a great question. So being an entrepreneur, and actually that's one of the modules in my program discussing that particular topic. I would say, so there are several points there. One thing, different people are motivated in a different way, right? So we have one of the core concept behind the Career Leap method, I call it your career blueprint.
Okay.
Which is a set of criteria about you and about what you want. That criteria, there are 3 types of criteria. There's an innate criteria. This is related to, this is how you are. This is how Jeff is. We're not going to change Jeff. This is how you've been designed, and that's how you've been operating all your life, right? So that's one piece. Right. Then that's innate criteria. Then there is an aspirational criteria. So this is related to what it is you want, like what it is you want, whether it's responsibilities, growth, money, learning, type of organization you want to be, like, what do you want? And the third type of criteria, I call it integrational criteria. It's related to how your work and non-work life integrate together, right? So one of the pieces of innate criteria is your motivational mechanism, because as humans, we're motivated in a lot of different ways. So there are 3 types of motivation mechanism. The first one, some people are motivated by outcomes. Like if you look at a real estate agent, for instance, or a salesperson, or even a builder, or project manager, to be good at that, you got to be motivated by outcomes. You have a particular deadline, particular time, particular outcome. Now, there's this different type of people that motivated by the process. So if you take a researcher or investigator, like a lot of scientists, or people that invent drugs, sometimes they don't know what exactly they're looking for, or they maybe have an idea what it is they're looking for, but they don't know exactly when they find it and how it would look like. So if you take a person who is very outcome driven and put them into this kind of investigation research mode, it will drive them insane,
That
right?
makes sense. Yes.
But there are people that are motivated by process. They really just like in the process, right? And there are people that are motivated by interaction and human connection. There are some people, if you ever were like even a barista in a coffee shop, there's somebody who will instantly connect with you, or a waiter in a restaurant, or maybe it's a social worker or a teacher, somebody that would have or a podcast host, somebody who would have an instant connection with you, so depending on your motivational mechanism. So what usually happens for entrepreneurs, you got to be really strong in all three of them. You got to be driven by outcomes, because if you're not driven by outcomes, it's very hard to build a business. But you got to be like also enjoying the process, right? Because
that makes sense.
Because part of being an entrepreneur is a lot of in and out and unexpected and research and investigation.
Right.
And if your business has anything to do with people, unless you're selling some non-human things to other non-human forms,
right?
You gotta be great in everything. So those are foundations for being an entrepreneur. Now, not everybody has all three of them, and that's why you see that a lot of businesses are developed in partnerships, right? Because you gotta cover all these three. There is no way around it.
Right.
And so that's if you personally don't have all of these qualities, maybe it is a partnership. On top of that, you got to be like self-motivated. You got to be very self-structured person, because as entrepreneurs, you don't have a boss. There's nobody coming you to do. So there's some other qualities that actually learned that you get. So that's to me like a good starting point for you,
right?
On making the decision. I think in our society, that's one of the things that I deal with is people have this very romantic idea that I need to own my own business. Right now, it's very fashionable.
Right.
It's not for, the reality is really not for everybody. But let me give you like an interesting example of one of my clients. So this woman, she's an international tax attorney. So imagine how smart you have to be and how educated you have to be that. And
smarter
she came
than
to me,
way smarter than me.
And she's like, I just hate it. Like I accidentally, got into this. Somebody said maybe laws, somebody said maybe international tax is a good idea, one thing after another. Here I am. This is not what I wanted to do. And the only idea that I have is to start my own business. Now, I don't know how to start my own business. I am not equipped to start my own business. I don't have capital to start my own business. So this is an example of how people get trapped if you have ideas that either unattractive, like her continue being an international tax attorney, or having ideas that are not viable, like let's go start a business, right? So if you don't have ideas that both attractive and viable, then you kind of will experience stuckness. So we did all the work on her, we did this on her career blueprint to understand who she is and what she wants, right? And then the other piece of work that we do is what I call it a career leap map approach. This is where we come up with abundance of ideas about where and what you could be doing. So, and then someplace where your blueprint marries your career leap map, someplace there is this intersection, those becomes your viable ideas that we will explore. So this lady she was a mom of two. She had an idea for a product for children herself. She wasn't ready to start her own business, but she realized that she had this profound interest in children education and things like that. You know? The next thing I'm getting an email from her. I'm getting on the phone with her. She's like, Misha, I got a gig with an international educational toy company in operational roles. So we kind of also look at roles, and she was very detailed oriented, very driven to produce results, kind of go-getter type of a person, which translates very nicely to COO or operational type of a role. Said, I got a gig, an international educational toy company in an operational role, and not only I'm doing what like aligned with what I want, I can also decide for myself whether running a business or creating my own business is for me or not. Right. So this is just an example of how you go through structured thinking and then you arrive. And then for a lot of people, maybe before starting business, there is some intermediary step for you to see whether maybe working for a startup and seeing what it takes to run a business, or maybe some other things. But, running a business is definitely not a good idea for most people.
I'm glad you ended with that little nugget there, because that's what was going to be my opinion. I wish you would have been around like 8 years ago to tell me that. Actually, check that. Every time I went and did some sort of training or an online class or anything about starting a business, and they described the qualities that people need to do entrepreneurship, I went, oh yeah, that's not me. But I'll keep going. Yeah, that wasn't a good move.
Yeah, listen, if you're really driven towards that and it's really calling you, you got to go try it,
Yeah.
I don't want to put on lid on anybody, but it should be a very conscious decision. But what I want people to pay attention that there's kind of a, other people's ideas, right? We talked about one of the influences. So right now in our society, there is a romantic idea about, let me go start my own business.
Do your own thing kind of thing. Yeah.
Go explore it, but also know that might or might not be for you. Like it's any other idea.
Be real about it, I think, is
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I learned. It's like, when these people are trying to, like people like you, right? I mean, they're not just saying these things and they want you to keep going with the course. It's like, you can stop anytime if you go, no, that's not for me. But
part of it, and the reason that people cling to some of these ideas because they're not exploring a full set of ideas that are available.
True. Right.
So that's in the absence of abundance to ideas, you cling to a few, right? And so basically, even before starting your business, examine a broader set of ideas and see. And listen, if running your own business, creating your own business, something that's really calling you, then go for it.
Yeah.
But really examine it and to me, what's very important that people make very conscious choices, right? Because at the end of the day, what separates somebody jumping off the cliff, right? And the cliff considers all the unknowns that you deal with, right?
Right.
And a lot of people are scared to make career changes because it feels like jumping off the cliff.
Right.
And part of the reason that it feels like jumping off the cliff, because if you actually take a very specific idea and investigate it and you understand how much money will you make, do you have the right skills and experience, what additional learning you need to do? If you take a specific idea and really examine it thoroughly and you decide to pursue it, it's not going to be like jumping off the cliff. It will be like making a leap. You will be jumping from one place to another. Now, it still be a little bit scary and will have some risk to it.
Right.
It's on a very different magnitude than jumping off the cliff.
Right.
So that part of the things that I teach people is how to go through the systematic investigation of ideas to get to the right idea. So when they decide to make a change, it's very conscious and they actually minimize risks and fears and,
and when they get there, they're more likely to actually like what they're doing.
Exactly.
which is part of the deal, I think,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about your ideas on job search and interviewing. I know. Yeah.
Sure. So two distinct questions. The job search, I think the traditional job search is when people usually think the more resumes they send out someplace, that's kind of their measure of their effectiveness in job search. And I hear that a lot. I just send out like 20 resumes.
Yeah.
And I usually
ZipRecruiter makes it so easy,
And I usually say, well, listen, it could work, especially if you kind of want to keep doing what you were doing and you kind of have your skills and experiences and your resume aligned to that. Maybe that could be a strategy.
Right.
I would also caution and say it's very low probability to get like a dream job that way. Like if you're really looking for something, if you care profoundly where you work, what you do, with whom you work, that type of strategy is usually not likely it's possible, you know, it's a chance,
I would
but
say,
there are
yeah,
other.
yeah, I agree with you on that. Like, I have a buddy who's a chemical engineer, and he loves being a chemical engineer, and he's really good at it. So
Mhm.
he's not trying to change his job, and he can go be a
Right.
chemical engineer someplace new, right? And he's going to
Sure, but
kill it
even
there. Yeah, it'll be
yeah, but
different. It'll be different.
even even sure, I usually ask people to go through an exercise to thinking where you want. Even they know
Yeah. Oh yeah.
what it is they want to do and they want to stick to their profession. The
Right.
question where you want to do. And in fact, in my philosophy, where is more important than what. So
Mm.
where you work important is what you do. Because if you work in the right organization and with the right people, you are more likely to arrive to a better what. But
Mm.
if you
So
work
true.
in a in poor where that's not aligned with who you are, even if
Mm.
you're doing what that's great, you still at the end of the day not feel at home there and not going to be satisfied there. So to me, answering where is super important. And once you have clarity about where and what you do, then you can actually pursue specific organizations. You know, you could pursue specific people. I think we live also in very unusual times that people are at our fingerprints. You know, you could connect to somebody on LinkedIn profile or write somebody a direct message.
Mm.
It's something wasn't available to people 20, 30 years ago. You can actually understand where these people went to school and what you have in common. Maybe you can get even an introduction, or
Mm.
there's many ways. So I usually say, get really clear. And the other mistake that people make, they keep their options open, you know. So there is this, it's also kind of misunderstanding that if you think you're broad, right, then it will be easier for you. But in reality, if you think very broad, then your personal brand will look very broad and not going to be attractive to any of those things. So my recommendation is opposite. I was like, go as narrow as possible, be very specific. This, you can
Right.
actually have several very specific points that you can pursue, but make them very specific from what is the industry where you want to be or the type of organization. Be
Mm-hmm.
very clear about the role and pick one for now. Just start with one and create a very solid story and very clear story for one brand, personal brand that you're creating. And you might create several. You might consider different industry and different roles and find that all of that will require a different way of thinking about it. If you want to make your story relevant, if you want to make you noticeable, it got to be very precise. And the only way,
Mm.
I call it laser sharp.
Mm.
Laser sharp. The only way to make it laser sharp, if you pick a very particular point, and
Mm.
then if you do, then this is what gives you power. Then you can think about, how do I think across all of my job experiences, learning, skills that I have? How do I, and now how can I craft my story that's relevant for this particular position? How do I summarize across all these different things to create a brand for me? You know, I just worked with this brilliant woman. She was a corporate attorney, and she, like, as a little girl, she wanted to be a CEO of Disney. And the reason that she went to law school, because she wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. But then
Wow.
one thing after another, she was in a corporate law. And here it is. She said, I actually like being a lawyer, but I don't want to be a corporate lawyer. I want to be an entertainment lawyer.
Okay.
So now we had to build a completely different story. It's not that easy from going from corporate law to entertainment law.
Mm.
So
Right.
so then she literally to have to craft her story. So we looked at everything, at the courses that she maybe took in college, at the pro bono work she did, at some other like, to find the relevant pieces to
Mm.
put it together
Mm.
in order to have a at least somewhat attractive story
Right.
so part of it, the more specific
No,
the more
that's great.
specific you are about what it is you want, then the much better you have a chance of building the story that you really want to present, and that's compelling and relevant for others.
Mm. 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 So let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on like interviews. Like, do you like interviews? Do you want, so like, how do you get an interview, and then how do you nail an interview? How about that?
Hmm. Again, so the getting an interview we just spoke a little bit about.
Right.
That's part of it. Is your LinkedIn, your resume, it all has to represent your story, and the better your story is, the more attractive you're a candidate. And the more, if you I'm also always a believer that all great organizations, before they post the jobs on their websites, they try to fill it through some other ways. It's only when they fail they make this thing public.
Right.
So there is a
That's
lot
true.
of jobs and there's a lot of opportunities that are not being published on the websites. So
Right.
I think if you want to get go after organizations that you really like, go do research about them, go connect with people there, go be proactive about, create an opportunity for them to get to know you. That's how I think you go about getting interviews. And nailing an interview, well, I think it goes both ways. So that's a lot of work that I do with our clients around building a career blueprint. And career blueprint is really understanding who you are and what you want. And that creates a great foundation for questioning. So part of it to tell your brand story to them, but part of it, how do they know that they are the right organization for you? And what is your foundation for making a decision that you actually want to work there?
Right.
And a lot of it, like I'm trying to go away, that we do have a lot of intuitive things, but once we articulate a lot of ideas about who we are and what you want, then these intuitive things becomes very conscious things, and you can ask very conscious place. So one of the big examples, and that's where I asked a lot of organizations, and I work with people on uncovering their value system. And then a lot of organizations talk about their values, my values integrity, my values customer service, my values helping customers. And then how do you know whether that's true? How do you know that it's not just the words the organization publish and there is nothing behind that? Right. So maybe I'll give you a quick tip to the listeners to give you some idea. So if organization is true about their value system and that you will find their value system, then you will see that it automatically will be translated into their business processes, into their performance evaluation model, into compensation model, if they true. So if they say that, we want to be the best customer service organization, then your question should be about, look, so how does that reflect in your measurements? How do you measure that? How do you measure performance of people? How is your compensation model? So you instantly will know, how do you what type of business practices? So it's all should be tied together. So that's a bunch of questions. So depending on their values, and you can definitely ask them questions about that to see whether they're true about that.
Yeah, I would call the customer service line.
Exactly. Yes.
That's perfect. That's great. I love it. So let's talk a little, let's see here. All right. So I know you're really into how do you make sure that you're aligning with this thing? You're going to get something that's meaningful to you and fulfilling. Is that part of that whole process?
Yeah.
Right.
Part of it, we work with people on uncovering their value system. So I'll use myself as an example. My vocational values are making a difference, clarity, and creating. So making a difference, right now, my intention is to make a difference with you and with your audience,
Okay.
Clarity. I don't always have clarity, but I strive for it. And in my work, my job is to bring clarity to people.
Okay.
And I created my teaching and my business, and my ultimate creation when my clients create what's next for them, right? So this is my value system, right? And then I organize not only my work, I organize my whole life around that. So my whole life, if I look at my life, I'm either with my family, right, which absolutely fits my value system. I'm either with my clients or in my business, which fits my value system, or I'm very involved with a nonprofit, Worldwide Orphans, and I do a lot of work in Ukraine now with the war there. I've founded an organization, Children of Ukraine, that's part of Worldwide Orphans, where we do a lot of work with kids there. But if you think about it, I organize my whole life in alignment with the value system. I worked with this amazing African-American gentleman, and he had a degree in pharmacology, and he had his construction business. And what was amazing about him, he had a really profound commitment to his community. He said, I really want to do something for my community. I really want to do something for my community. And he had so many talents that he when we were creating his career leap map, he had so many ideas there. Too many ideas. Every time he would come up with more ideas, how we will ever narrow it down. And then at the end, he came, we went through a few rounds and a few rounds longer than anybody else. And then he said, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to start an organic farm. And what I want to contribute to my community is how to teach them to grow food in a sustainable way. So I worked with him several years ago. And in January, I got an email from him. Like Misha said, you won't believe it. So his values was, if I'm not mistaken, curiosity, creativity, and community. There were 3 C's, right? He said, we started a farm. Right now, my brother and I are looking right now for a larger farm, and we have our nonprofit. Okay. And what was amazing for me that everything he's doing inside of his value system, right? You can build your whole life inside of value system that you have if you understand what it is.
Wow. So he had a pharmacology degree, right?
I know.
And a construction business.
Yes.
And then he started an organic farm.
Yep.
I like this guy. That's great. It sounds like the IT guy, like me, that then went and did a psychology degree and then went to massage school. So I'm still looking for what I want to do. It's good. I think learning is awesome, and you can never like run out of new things to try. Anyway, that's me. So let's talk about these 3 things: authenticity, relevance, and transparency. Because I love authenticity. I think it's an excellent tool for life in general, right? So if I'm super authentic with a guest and they don't like me, they just leave. It's a great filter and simultaneous attractor. That's my opinion on authenticity. So what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I think you picked it from like my principles of impactful communication, right? And what I say that's in all your communication, whether it's resume, LinkedIn, whether it's you in a conversation with people, whether you reach out to new contacts, you can be guided by principle of impactful communication. So one of them that you want to be authentic. And to me, authentic is being true to who you are and what it is you want. But it starts with your personal clarity. You cannot be authentic if you're not clear. So part of it is you need to get clear about what it is you want, what are your aspirations, and then it could be part of your messaging. You can do it in very, very authentic way and inspiring way. Relevance related to, so resume is a great example of how most people are not using this principle. People organize the resume in chronological order with a lot of bullets, as if anybody's interested in your autobiography and everything that you did there, right? So the once you're clear about what it is you want, and that's where the clarity again comes important, then you can organize all your communication in a way that it's relevant. So you crafting the story about yourself that you presenting to other people, right? So in that story, you choosing what information you showing, in what order, and in what level of detail. And that's basically the key to relevance. That if you're clear about what it is you want and what you're going after, then you bring relevant information in higher detail than irrelevant, and in the order that makes sense.
That makes sense.
And transparent, the other piece where that's kind of what could become disappointing for both parties, because you just try to pretend that you know something that you don't, or you're trying. So I work with a lot of people that are making industry shifts or role shifts. And I usually say, hey, be transparent that you don't know X. Be transparent that you're moving into an industry that you don't know, but we can make a case of why it's a good thing, that you can bring maybe certain expertise from other industry that will be, or that, you have evidence that you thrive in these environments where you're not familiar, and that's where you become innovative, or that there is evidence that you have succeeded in these big changes because either you moved countries, or you switched degrees, or you changed profession already. So part of transparency could be extraordinary appealing for the brand. So instead of hiding that you don't know something, you don't have something,
right.
Be transparent about it, because nobody's stupid. People will understand that you don't have it.
It's probably going to come out anyway in a bad way.
Put yourself in the driver's seat and have a good story why it might be fine, why it might not be a problem, or might be actually your asset.
Right.
So that's basically goes to 3 principles of impactful communication: be authentic, be relevant, and be transparent.
Yeah. I remember, I can't remember the actor's name. I think it might have been Robert Patrick. You remember the Liquid Terminator guy?
No, I'm not good with cultural references
I'm sorry.
and names.
Okay, not important. He's an actor, right? So actors, their job interviews are called auditions, right? So his point of in this podcast interview he made was he just looked at an audition as a skill, and that he wanted to get really good at. And sometimes that he wants to be honest and be really good and make a connection. And maybe he gets the job and maybe he doesn't.
Right.
But even if he doesn't get the job, that person, the next time they go to cast something, is going to remember that positive impact, that positive connection. I was like, that's awesome. That's like, maybe not this job, but remember me for next time kind of idea. So, okay. So, a lot of people, me included, we get stuck in jobs. So let's talk a little bit about why people get stuck in jobs and why they stay there, even though they might not, think that's the best job for them.
Yeah. So why? I think I gave you the reason. It's we spoke a little bit about that. How did you get here? Look at the series of choices that you made, and mostly it's other people's opinions, not yours. It's circumstances, right? And it's inertia. So then you kind of arrive, and then, there are several traps that people, one of them is, I call them skills and experience trap. When you invested into a skill and experience, and then if you look at the traditional way people look for job, you update your resume, right, with your skills and experience, that you'll reach out to your network that's probably part of the same framework, and then you'll get interviews from the places where that skills and experience are valued, and then you'll probably get another version of the current job. Maybe it will pay a little bit more, maybe it will be a little bit. So, and then people like, why am I not happy? Why am I not happy? Okay, I need to do something else. And then they will update their resume and they will follow exactly the same cycle they've done before. Right. I've done it myself, so I'm very familiar with all of these things. I'm not talking theoretically, kind of experience, all of these things that I spoke about. I've done that. Yeah. So that's a trap. So and people stay stuck. And then at some point they really, they don't have good ideas about what they want to do. B, they might lose confidence in themselves. 3, they might be concerned if they have families, mortgages, then they're afraid of taking risks. So there's like a lot of reasons. If you think about a concept of status quo is like a swamp, and it's literally kind of designed to suck you in, and whatever is happening in your head will be always like just regurgitating the same ideas and pulling you back, and why you can't do it, why it's not possible. And even once in a while, there's some idea that will come out and will jump out of a swamp accidentally. There will be a force that will pull it back. That's right. That's basically how things are with status quo. And I think, again, part of the power tool is having career education. That's basically, because if you have the right tools, if you can be in a systematic inquiry about who you are and what I want, what are the options that are available to me, how do I make right for me choices, and how do I get the right tools to actually get what I want, then it becomes a completely different conversation than when status quo is starting to lose its power, because suddenly you have really tangible tools and tangible ways you can. The other way people get stuck is because it's very scary to commit to the change, because change is unknown. Change is really terrifying.
Right. That's true.
But so I would say, if you can't commit to change, it's actually fine. Commit to exploration. That's a great start. And it's much easier once you explore your option, understand what's right for you, then you will feel if there is a change that you want to commit to. But first and foremost, you got to commit to an exploration. And maybe the only other point that I want to add here, because a lot of people ask me, so when is the right time? When is the right time? I usually say, hey, if you ask me when is the right time, you're probably already kind of behind. And there, right. I would say the best, I don't know who said that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. But the second best time to plant a tree is now. Right. So if you are in that inquiry, is that the right time? That means probably you could have started sometime back, but the second best time is really now.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah. I think I felt that even when I was in the Air Force, I thought those things, like, ugh, I can't wait for this assignment to be over.
Right.
But, I also, a good thing about knowing you're going to leave at a particular time or date, you can change your set. Okay, this will not last forever. It'll be okay. And the next one might be better. Okay. So Misha, this has been a blast. We're coming up on the hour mark, so we should start wrapping up. And I know you've got stuff to do. So do I. So how can people best get in touch with Misha let me make sure I get the URL right. So it's thecareerleap.com.
That's the best place. Come to thecareerleap.com. There is a contact form. You can reach out to me. You can read about me, about my programs, about testimonials from people that I work with. So there's a lot of good stuff on the website, and there are a lot of things to try. And there's a lot of new things that's coming. I'm building about a bunch of really cool tools with AI engines and that will help you career ideate and that will give you feedback on your resume. So I'm doing a super exciting thing. So I don't know when this interview will come out, but come and check out what's there.
Excellent. Misha, this has been a blast. I think I learned a lot. And I hope to talk again soon. Maybe I'll get more free coaching. I'm going to have to take notes after I listen to the recording. All right. So thank you very much. You have a good one.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.